introduction. Thanks, Jim. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Again, my name is Hunter Tower. I'm the Pennsylvania Director of the Freedom Foundation. First, I want to thank Chairman Jim Clymer, Executive Director Donna Ivanovich, and the rest of the Constitution Party staff and volunteers for putting this great event together and for having me here today. As my background has been stated, my family has a long history in the political arena and serving this great nation. As a former college basketball player, I had dreams of playing elsewhere, but as reality and basketball politics came into play, I started getting more involved in the political process and wanted to use my intimate knowledge that I acquired from my family over the years to do better and leave wherever I was better than when I found it. That's why I held local political office, to try and motivate and spur the Republican Party at the local level to more activism focused on expanding our everyday freedoms from government overreach. What specifically led me to the Freedom Foundation? That's a good segue and a nice segue into what we do and why it's so important, because I felt it was a calling to me as a very real and effective way to help taxpayer-funded employees get out from union bondage to stop funding radical left-wing politics they don't support. The Freedom Foundation is a national 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to fighting government unions by helping public sector unions resign their union membership and stop paying union dues that typically only flow to left-leaning politicians and causes. Now, what is a government union? That is your teachers union, the National Education Association and American Federations of Teachers, the NEA or AFT, your state and county workers, AFSCME, or the American Federations for State, County, and Municipal Employees, which you'll be hearing about again momentarily. The labor unions such as AFL-CIO, SCIU, and many others, including Teamsters and the United Food and Commercial Workers, or UFCW as they're known. All of these workers represent wide varieties of employees like state-run healthcare workers, public works or construction workers, correctional officers, and the like. Our organization was founded on the West Coast in Olympia, Washington in 1991 as your typical state think tank, but specifically dedicated our cause to fighting government union abuses in 2014. In 2014, our president, who is also our former CEO, recognized that no one was on the ground fighting government unions, and in order to transform America, these unions needed to have their political power stripped from them. And that begins with decreasing membership numbers so they have smaller political coffers to buy their pet politicians. These public sector unions have been in bed with one party, the Democrat Party, for decades and have infiltrated every facet of our society. The irony of this is Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who the Democrat Party loves to prop up as a champion of labor and whose portrait actually hangs in the Oval Office, believed that the collective bargaining agreements were incompatible with public sector work because the very nature and purposes of government make it impossible for administrative officials to represent fully or to bind the employer in mutual discussions with government employee organizations. Further, FDR recognized that it was unfair of elected officials to sit at the bargaining table with union bosses to negotiate over terms funded by the taxpayer while the taxpayer did not have a seat at the table. On this point, we strongly agree with FDR, very rare. The union dues paid out of public employee paychecks are not the employee's money. That's your money, it's my money. Our tax dollars fund those salaries, and our tax dollars also fund the very unions who then take the money and use it to grow government, secure their own political victories, and keep their cycle of power that is used against us. Public employee unions have a stranglehold over public policy at every level of government in this country, and they maintain it using our own money. This is a large part of why we at the Freedom Foundation do what we do to help people stop paying or stop funding these unions against their will. It's been an evolving process, but it's headed in the right direction. In 2014, the United States Supreme Court decided on a case called Harris versus Quinn. This case in particular had state employees from Illinois that worked in the state's home services program who were getting union dues deducted as they were getting paid by federal Medicaid dollars to work as, quote, personal assistant to people who needed care. These workers were not happy they were getting their paychecks deducted, and it was illegal for the union to deduct federal Medicaid dollars for dues. Thankfully, the court agreed, and the workers won, and the court decided the First Amendment prohibits the collection of an agency fee from rehabilitation program personal assistants who do not want to join or support the union. That decision led our organization to open up a second office in Oregon, with both states, of Washington and Oregon, now dedicated to helping in-home care providers keep more of their Medicaid dollars by getting them out of the union. In 2016, a similar complaint by a California teacher who didn't want to fund union activity with her paycheck also made its way to the Supreme Court. Unfortunately, shortly after Rebecca Friedrichs versus the California Teachers Association was heard in oral arguments, Justice Antonin Scalia tragically passed away, and a 4-4 Supreme Court split decision led to a victory in favor of the union. Finally, the Supreme Court ruled in a landmark decision in 2018 called Janus versus AFSCME, again AFSCME, American Federation for State Communist Employees. Janus was the man by the name of Mark Janus, who was a state employee for Illinois and realized his union dues were going to causes and candidates he didn't believe in. In 2018, the justices voted in his favor, and that the decision was, quote, "No public sector employee who has refused membership in trade unions may be compelled to pay union dues to said unions because of the benefits that they may receive from their collective bargaining. When applied to public sector workers, fair share agreements violate the First Amendment protections in both free association and free speech," end quote. Following that Janus decision, we opened up offices in California in 2018, Ohio in 2019, and again here in Pennsylvania in 2020. We are officially in every state as of July of 2021. And thank you. And to date, we have eradicated and freed over 114,000 union members to stop paying union dues to their union. We currently have more than 80 legal cases against government employee unions that do not abide by the law, and our efforts have directly removed over $195 million from union revenue that the unions would have otherwise had for political purposes. We call it the cycle of corruption. The public sector union bosses siphon taxpayer money out of their members' tax-funded paycheck for union dues, and in turn they buy out and give political contributions to a candidate. Over 95% of the time, and some even 99% of the time, to a Democrat politician. And when that politician is in office, the union bosses now have them to do their bidding and to keep raising taxes and increasing the size of government to get more union members to join and bring in more money for government unions. And the cycle just continues every election cycle. As I stated previously, especially here in Pennsylvania, we have an election every single year, so it never stops. To dive into a little bit of detail of our work, and I don't want to give anybody heart attacks here, but our organization just uncovered over $36 million that went to government unions in the name of PPP loans, while they weren't eligible to receive them. Now these loans, as we were told by the Biden White House and others, were meant to go to small businesses and nonprofit organizations and alike so they didn't lose their jobs or livelihoods. That was just the opposite. As we start to peel this onion of fraud and illegal kickbacks, we have found that over $1.2 million specifically went to Pennsylvania public sector unions, and the Pennsylvania AFL-CIO chapter takes the claim as the largest loan recipient here in our Commonwealth at just over $267,000. The public union that takes the dubious claim for the highest recipient of PPP loans in the country is the Michigan Education Association with a $6.4 million loan. You can download the entire list on our website at www.freedomfoundation.com and see each state and all the different unions under the headline, Union's $36 million Scheme. Thanks to our research, 4 ranking members of key committees on small business, oversight, education, and labor and health, employment, labor, and pensions, co-authored a letter calling for an investigation by the Small Business Administration. We also uncovered that the National Education Association took in over $377 million in dues just last year alone in 2021. Only 8.5% of this went to anything remotely used as funding or resources for students and teachers. $117 million was spent for contributions, grants, and gifts that were primarily political. $66 million went directly to political activities. And the real kicker here is $55 million was given as benefits to union leadership. This is the same union that led the fight to keep our schools closed and children masked. It's no surprise that the NEA, along with other unions, had total control of our executive branch, not only in the White House, but all of our state governments, when they gave the Biden-Harris campaign over $76 million as a political contribution. To the union bosses, if you have enough money, apparently anyone is for sale. In March of 2020, in the headwinds of COVID, when we opened up our Pennsylvania office, and that's when I met Jim, our outreach team started informing public employees of their rights when it comes to their ability to resign their union membership. Our first year was an immense success, gutting the unions over $1.3 million in revenue that they will never see again, and freeing over 1,200 workers from union bondage. We doubled down on that success and strategy as we entered last year in 2021 and helped over 2,500 union dues-paying members leave their union. A majority coming from one union alone, AFSCME, which is our Commonwealth's biggest collective bargaining union outside of the teachers' union. In the fall of 2021, we began an extensive outreach campaign to teachers in the form of informal and off-site teacher roundtables, which were a way to make the educators feel safe, that they could speak freely, and we can go over in detail with them how much money the unions are taking out of their paychecks and using it for political activity. Some teachers were paying close to $2,000 a year in union dues. This could be a great vacation for their family, a nice weekend trip somewhere, medication for their children, or anything they wanted. But instead, the union takes their money and does whatever they want with it. The sad part of these roundtables is sharing with these educators that actually love their job and careers in teaching children is when they find out their employee writes from us and not their union. It just goes to show that unions want to keep their members in the dark as much as possible. These roundtables have led to over 1,000 Pennsylvania teachers leaving the teachers union since the COVID school shutdowns began in March of 2020. In the first quarter of this year in Pennsylvania, we have nearly matched our entire 2021 opt-out numbers. And to date, we have freed over 6,300 Pennsylvanians from union bondage, which has cost government unions here in the Keystone State over $7 million they will never see again. Our success comes from shedding light on the partisan use of members' dues dollars, whether it's a union spending millions to influence the political campaigns or the union's funding of radical left-wing activist groups. These hardworking dues-paying members are becoming aware of just how out of touch their unions really are. We at the Freedom Foundation believe in workers' freedoms and strongly support any individual who prefers not to belong to their public sector union anymore. We're confident the majority of the public sector union dues-paying members don't agree with all of their money going towards one political party and should choose where their hard-earned paycheck goes instead.